there. Let me ask you a question. In times of uncertainty, what's your process? That's going to be our topic this evening on the CBC Home Service Success Network. And we'll welcome you back, where our mission, the reason we do this, so we can help you build a stronger, more profitable service business, home service. That's where it's at, folks. So anyway, what do? Things get squirrely. Things happen in your business. Things get uncertain. It could be any number of things. Slow phones, the economy shifts. Let's face it, gas prices, they're going out of sight and they've went up rapidly. Supply chain issues, weather changes, or maybe you're just having a bad day or a bad week or sometimes a bad month. What do? Do you react or do you execute a process? Because today's topic, folks, is critical. In times of uncertainty, what is your process? And you know something? That uncertainty can certainly run your business for you. So, Cheryl, what's your thought on tonight's topic that we're talking about here?
I think it's going to be really good because let's face it, when fear shows up or uncertainty, logic just totally leaves the room. It's gone. And most owners don't even realize that they're reacting. But they're not leading. And so I think it's a huge problem, and one I hope that people can listen to and maybe get some good ideas off of.
Well, if you're one of our clients here at CBC Success Group, one of the things you do is you call us. And that's what we deal with. We deal with the problems and help people come up with solutions to those problems. And I see these things all the time, that things start to get tight. It's been a rough winter for a lot of people. Phones slowed down tremendously. Maybe we're seeing competitors that are dropping pricing. And we're faced with certain things. We're up against the wall. We decide, should we cut our marketing? Do we let our standards slip? Do we make reactive layoffs or let people go? Or do we actually just avoid these tough financial conversations? When you're in the heat of the moment, sometimes this is what happens. And the truth is, many times managers and businesses simply lose control. You see, uncertainty doesn't destroy companies. A lack of a process during uncertainty, it will destroy it. The best operators, they don't panic. They go to a playbook. And one of the things that comes back as we put this episode together, Cheryl, do you remember when we were down in New Orleans at the HPBA show some years ago? And it was the week that COVID attacked the United States. And we didn't know if we were even going to get on a plane. And you remember for months after that, we went through all kinds of havoc, meetings with our total client base. We have weekly calls, keeping people encouraged. What comes to your mind of uncertainty? Because that jumped into mind when I thought about this broadcast.
Well, the one that gets me so much is when things are uncertain, people start discounting their products or their services. But all they're doing at that point, they're training their customers to wait. If a customer waits long enough, the price will go down. And you said earlier about marketing, that's what feeds you. Why do people, of all things, cut their marketing? They're cutting their own throat at that time.
Yeah. I heard a story one time. It was about a captain of a sailing ship. And every time this ship went into battle, the captain told the people that worked for him, his person that dressed him and all that, go to my cabin and get my red breeches. And they asked him, well, why do you want red breeches? Well, if I start bleeding, I don't want anybody that I lead to see me bleeding because it's going to look like weakness. But one day, and this comes out, I hope this sounds okay, folks. If I insult anybody in the next few minutes, I apologize. But one day he looked, and over the horizon, here come a fleet of warships, a fleet. And what did the captain say? He told his orderly, Go get my brown britches. I'll let you read in between that one. But as a leader, you've got to maintain that you can make it through here because your people are going to look at you. Whenever they look at you, are they seeing strength? Are they seeing a leader that's going to take them through? Or are they seeing weakness in that person and uncertainty? Because what leaders have to do is they have to show strength. If you think back to World War II and when England was being when Germany was bombing England, Winston Churchill led England through that through his leadership. So what you got to do is you got to look at what's going on. You got to be able to measure it. And what you've got to be able to do is take the action that's going to happen and put your plans together before uncertainty even shows up. What are you going to do? What's your systems for this? So back to you, Cheryl. What's your thoughts on this? You got any good stories about being prepared?
I try to be prepared all the time. I can tell you it's one of the hardest things in the world some days. But, the thing about it is these people are looking at their business to feed their family, to feed their employees' family, to do things and make it work. And they've got to keep everything in line or it doesn't work. And you were talking earlier about hiring, and I'm watching people hire out of desperation right now. And then they turn around, they're firing out of frustration. You can't keep that balance going long before you just really mess up and have no team that works.
Yep. So what you got to do when everything hits the plan, what's the first thing you got to do? The first thing is you just got to stop. You just got to pause. You just got to get your mind together. Because here's the whole thing. If you're panicking, the fight or flee motive takes over. And you can't let that happen. So you don't make decisions. Hey, we got to slash our pricing by tomorrow to get jobs. We got to shut off our marketing. We got to lay some people off. You've got to think these things through. You slow it down and you shift into the facts. Step 2, you go to the numbers. What's the numbers saying? Look at our call volume. What about our conversion rates, our average ticket? What's our closure rate? What's our marketing ROI? Here's a big one, Cheryl. I was just talking to a client the other day, and he was asking me, should I cancel a certain type of marketing that he was doing? Well, I said, the key is it's expensive, but what's our ROI? And when he ran the ROI on this, it was amazing. He found out that for every lead that marketing source brought him, cost him over $700. And they weren't that quality of leads to justify over $700. Also, you got to remember a cash position. Cash is king. Do you have the reserves to weather through this? Because what feels like a crisis, it often isn't. It's a specific problem. It's not a total collapse. What's your thought from there, Cheryl?
Well, I'm going to back up to the numbers thing. Do you suppose some people just don't look at the numbers because they can pretend nothing's happening if they don't know what their numbers are? Or are they just not used to looking at the numbers? But I hear people saying all the time, we're doing good, but on the other hand, they're backing up every minute of the day. And how can give the people a few ideas of how to grasp their numbers? I think that's a hard thing for people to do.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of numbers. Like I said, what's the ROI of everything you buy? Are you getting a return on the investment? But what you really got to do is bear down here and identify what the real problem is. We've got to diagnose it. We can't just guess it. And you got to ask yourself, is this a lead flow issue? Is it a sales issue? Is this a pricing issue? Is it a capacity issue? What we got to do is, many times we look at symptoms instead of the causes. And you got to do something that we always profess to do, which is inspect for what you expect every single time. This is where a really strong business separates itself from the others. They don't figure it out in the moment. They execute what was already decided. For example, if their leads drop, are they increasing their targeted marketing spend, not cutting it, re-engaging past customers, pushing outbound calls? Are they looking at their receivables? Are they keeping up with this every day? Or is it getting away to one day, now we're in a cash crunch and we figure out we haven't treated our receivables properly? We got to review our expenses strategically, not just blindly cut them, but if they're not producing ROI, we got to make the hard decisions, not an emotion-based decision, but it's got to be a data-driven decision. You see, these are the type things, if you're running your business and you're watching it and watching the numbers and watching what's happening, it's not going to creep up on you. It's not going to happen all at once. It's just like when that COVID hit and we were in New Orleans, folks, it had actually been on the news for a couple months. It just hadn't caught our attention in this country until that particular week in March of 2020. Everybody remembers that week. Remember when we all got scared, everything, and the world seemed to change. It's kind of like when 9/11 hit. The world changed. All of a sudden, got more difficult to get on airplanes. Cheryl, what's your thoughts on what we're talking about here now?
Well, I think it's just people don't look at the bottom line, and they want to look at their overall, the picture of it, but not at each frame. And I think that's where a lot of people are going wrong. And the main thing I think they need to understand is that their feelings are not business strategy. I feel like it needs to do this. That's not strategy. That's a feeling. They need to take what they're doing, like us with when COVID hit. You and I made a decision in the hotel room to go ahead and just stay there and let everybody get out, and then we could catch a plane the next day.
Yeah.
That's strategy.
Yeah. But here's a big one. And I mentioned this earlier, and this is leadership. And I want you to think for a minute, back when you were a small child, child, did you ever see your parents scared? Did you ever see that happen? Gerald, did you ever see your parents scared?
My mom, never my dad.
You've seen your mom. But again, as a small child, when your parents show fear, that's going to instill fear into the children. The children are going to see that. Well, it's the same way in a company. When you're the leader and you exhibit fear to those that you lead, it's a problem. Go back to the captain. Why did he put his brown breeches on? Think for yourself there, because he didn't want to see something. He didn't want his people he lead to see what might happen. So he put his brown breeches on there. So again, don't react emotionally. If you react emotionally, your people will too. If you start talking about the sky is falling, you're going to create a lack of certainty amongst your people, and things are going to go downhill. You got to communicate the plan. You got to show the people what are the numbers, what's happening here. But most of all, you have to reinforce stability, because what's going to happen, your calmness and the strength that you show, that's what's going to create their confidence to stay with you through this. Okay. Cheryl, what you think about all this?
You have to. I mean, if you're falling apart, the world's falling apart to them, because what you're providing for them is taking care of their family. And if they see you to the point that you think, all hell's breaking loose, there goes their stability and the thoughts of what can happen to their family. I mean, right now, people are getting laid off right and left. They're scared. They have families to feed. They have things that they need to get done. They have homes that they need to pay for. And can a company carry someone all the time? No, they can't. But they've got to realize these people are afraid. They have got to suck up some of their feelings and show a face that lets them believe what's going on. And I think that starts with transparency when the company's good. Show people what the company's doing. Don't just come up one day and say, "Yeah, I got to close the doors. There's no money left." Because a lot of times they can help you with and help you talk you through some things. Maybe they've got some good ideas. At least they won't get a knife stuck in their back when you just throw your hands up and give up.
Right. Let's take an example. Every business has slow seasons. They have slow seasons. A lot of people don't like to admit it. In the HVAC industry, they have what they call the shoulder season. That's when air conditioning is starting to end and heating systems haven't kicked into gear yet. And it's a slow season. In the chimney and hearth industry, we start seeing things getting slack every year in January. Every year in January, all of a sudden, it's like, is my phone working? We call ourselves to make sure it's going. So, what do strong managers do? They know that this is going to happen. Weak operators, weak managers, what do? They panic. We got to run specials. We got to drop the price. We got to sit and wait and hope this gets better. But if we take a strong operator, a strong manager, they're going to push campaigns to get business rolling. They're going to look at all-season products, all other services they can offer. They're not the opposite season. They're going to do market preventative maintenance. What do we got to do to our marketing plan? They're going to look at how do they reactivate their old customers. Same thing here. If cash flow tightens up, number one, you got to have reserves to get through this thing. If you don't have reserves, you're going to be borrowing money. And when you borrow money, you're going to be owned by the banks, just the way it is. So a weak manager, they're ignoring receivables, hope it fixes itself. The strong manager, what does he do? They're tightening up their AR. They're following up aggressively. They're protecting cash just like it was the oxygen that we breathe. Or the sales dip. What do weak managers do? It's the market. There's nothing we can do about it. We're just going to sit here and cry about it. We're just going to close down. What do other people do? The strong ones, they review their close rate. They spend the time training their technician. They fix their processes. They write new systems. They're doing swap meetings, discussing with their people, fixing the weaknesses. Same situation, it just provided a totally different outcome because one was reactive, the other was taking action. Back to you, Cheryl, your turn.
The thing about it, the thing that really, I guess it doesn't surprise me. It's the way it is. This happens every year. It's not a new phenomenon that just happened this year. It happens every year. So I've watched more companies than we want to talk about wait till the day when everything hits the fan before they start. Yes, some of them do what you just said. They get things set up, they do SOPs. The thing is, they know it's coming. Why not prepare for it just a little bit earlier? Get those campaigns out and moving before the other part of the year goes completely dead. And that way you've got your books they still have clients on them. But every year we see them waiting till about 4 weeks after the phones have gone dead. And it's like, oh no, now I must do this. No, you must have done it 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. And, it takes them back again to that spell with COVID of what was going on. And there was a quote that I was using. I didn't invent the quote, but it was, don't waste the crisis. In other words, business was in a crisis there for a period of time. The smart people were spending this time re-systematizing, building their standards to come out stronger. The weak operators, they were just sitting there. In fact, you remember, right? We actually interviewed Tom Ziegler, had him as a guest one night when we had all of our clients together. And Tom was telling people, this is the thing that you've got to do in business. You've always got to prepare for the worst, but you always expect the best. So I think as a business owner, that's what we have to do. We have to prepare for the worst, but we always keep our hopes up and expect the best. But again, we've got to inspect for what we expect. We got to inspect for it, and we got to be strong leaders to get through these crises. Back to you, Cheryl.
Yeah, we see a lot of stuff coming down the pike, and you can attempt to prepare for it. The thing that really puts the leader at the top of the thing is when something happens that was not planned, that was not out there. We saw COVID coming. We should have had our eyes open. We did not see 9/11 coming. It hit, and that was what happened. Nobody was prepared for what was going on there. But you've got to actually be prepared for those times. You don't know when your top lead man is going to get sick and can't perform. There's so many ifs in this world that if you start living by the if this happens, if this happens, if this happens, it's not going to work. You just need to get plans in place for when it happens, because it will happen eventually to you. So go ahead, get your system set up for those times. I mean, we're always telling people to dump their mind so everybody else knows what they know.
Yeah. So, but here's the real question. Do you have a process? Do you really have processes? Or do you simply wing it when things get tough? We talked about COVID during this period of time. And I well remember when you could not go to a restaurant. Restaurants were closed down. What did the restaurants do? They figured out that they were going to make a living and make it through with takeout food. I can still remember making trips to restaurants, getting takeout food for those months. Okay. There was a seafood restaurant near here. Went out there, people were lined up to get seafood cooked there. Because here's the whole thing. Uncertainty is a part of life. It's not going away. But here's the thing. Your response to it, that's 100% in your control. So here's my challenge to you. Write down your uncertainty playbook. What numbers are you checking? What happens to trigger action in your company? What actions you take? How you communicate? Because when the next tough moment hits, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the systems you've established. When we talk about how things have disrupted lives, think back to only 2024. I think it was 2024 when Hurricane Helene hit the western part of North Carolina. It decimated that area. I just drove through there last week. And last week, I actually drove through Batcave, North Carolina. They had just opened up the road. It's completely different. The road's on the other side of the river. And when I even put something on Facebook, it's unreal to see. Driving down I-40, it's down to 2 lanes, and who knows how long before it'll be open. What about that bridge that was hit by the ship up in Baltimore? And the bridge is still down, major artery to get around. People have to react to those things. So, Cheryl, what would be your closing thoughts on today's topic?
Take a little time to look at what has happened, what you know is going to happen again, and think about the things that are not there, and go ahead and get your processes in place. It's inevitable. You need to do it. And then you can work with things. You don't react to them. You don't send your whole company into a spiral just because you're spiraling.
That's it. Be that leader. Be the strong person. Be the Churchill that took England through the German onslaught. Be the person that is that true leader. That's what's going on. So, hey, I want to thank you for joining us this week on the CBC Home Service Success Network. If our messages hit home, do us a favor. Hit that share button. Hit that like button. Help us build our algorithm up. We're having a good viewership on our on our repeat episodes out there. We're getting up to 15, 20, 25,000 views some weeks. We'd like to get more. And if you see that this is value, would you consider sharing it out there, giving us a like, giving us a little bit of love? We'd love to see that. That's what makes our day. And remember this, the best businesses don't avoid uncertainty, they prepare for it. And with that, we'll see you next week on the next episode of the CBC Home Service Success Network. Appreciate you joining us. As always, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a pleasure to speak to you like this each and every week. See you next week on the next episode. Thanks a lot for being here.